Have you ever been interested in developing your psychic gifts? Today, I am so excited to introduce you to a magnificent human who I have the privilege and honor of knowing. Her name is Pat Goddard. She is a psychic medium, and she is also a psychic development coach. And I have had, full honesty, hundreds, maybe hundreds of readings in my life, especially like since my divorce. So in the last 7 years. And this woman has been so freaking spot on about so many things that I've never referred anyone to any other psychic out there that I have seen. And she is someone I'm like, oh, you want someone good? You want this lady. Oh, you want someone good? You want this lady. So with that, I am so honored to introduce you to that lady, this amazing human, Pat. Hello, my love.
Oh my God. I was like, do I deserve that intro? Absolutely not.
Yes, you do. You do. See, that's the thing
Hello.
is like, you're good, but like, I don't think you're really good because I've had so many readings done in my life. When you're going through like a dark night of the soul, like that hard part, and you just want answers to things,
Yes.
and we look outside of ourselves so often, like all the answers are within us, but sometimes they need to be validated, right? Like you want to hear someone else who doesn't know you, doesn't, can just tap into something magical and then say things that you're like, okay, yes, I resonate with that. I feel that.
Yeah.
And I've had so many readings done. And with yours, I was like, dang, this woman, she's amazing. Yeah.
Thank
And like
you
super
so much.
affordable still. And I keep saying that to people. I'm like, get her while she's affordable. Cause one day she's going to be like $500 an hour. You're going to be like, darn, I should have went to her website so long
Oh
ago.
my God. You are so kind. I'm not kidding when I say like I am so grateful to be here. And it's funny you mentioned about like pricing and stuff because that's something I've definitely just on this journey struggled with. Like
Yeah.
what's a price that works for people? And I want this to be something that people can actually connect with and afford. And yeah, oh my gosh, I'm so happy to be here.
Well, you're amazing. Okay, so let's tell people a little bit about you first. So,
Okay,
who are you? How did you get here? And yeah, let's start with that. What is your
okay.
background? Like, have you always had these gifts? Have you always known? Have you always been like really dialed in more than other people?
Great question. Okay, so I would say first and foremost, I believe everyone's psychic. We can talk more about that in a second. But for my own journey, ever since I can remember as a kid, like I went through a really traumatic childhood. I was in foster care, later adopted, and when I was little, I remember distinctly having memories of seeing things that were beyond, and I didn't know it at the time, but I had to go to therapy. I had horrific nightmares, and I think a part of that is yes, the trauma I went through as a kid, but also I was tuning into other realms of reality. Um, and so like when I look back now, I'm like, oh my gosh, it makes sense. Of course, yeah, I'm a full-time psychic now. But as I was walking my journey, it's like, what's happening to me? What is this? And my parents, my adopted parents growing up were extremely Catholic. So this is not something that's, like, yay, this is great. It's that's not in the Bible, don't talk about it, and that's not real. And so I was like, oh no, what's happening to me? And it wasn't until high school. I think about it now and I laugh, but my friends would call me Prophecy Pat. And I'm like, oh, you guys are so funny, whatever. And they're like, no, you say things and they happen. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then in college, I like shut it down for a long time. And then it wasn't until a little bit after college that I fully embraced it.
What were
And
you
it was
pursuing in college? I got to know. Like,
college, I was
yeah.
pursuing a science degree, kinesiology. I wanted to go to PA school for physician assistant work.
Okay.
And I was
Yeah.
like, I know I'm meant to heal people and this is my journey and all these things. And then I went to hospitals and I'm like, this is not it. I don't belong here. The fluorescent lighting, for one, was too much for me, like overstimulating. I was like, this is not how I'm meant to heal people. And it freaked me out because I was like, what am I going to do with my life? You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I had
Don't a
my
lot of
own.
people get there? They go to college and they're pursuing something because that's the thing to do, but it's
Yes.
not really the thing. And then you get into that job and you kind of think you're trapped. Like, hello, you're 22, 23, 20. You've got plenty of time to figure
Yeah, but
things
you
out.
don't
Heck, I'm
think that
46 and
way.
still figuring it out, like
Yeah.
about figuring it out. So, okay, so then you're done with school.
Yes. I
You're
have
really
my
this
own
profession
psychic
is not
experience.
fitting. Okay.
Yeah, I went to a psychic online, and it like started with a phone call, and she's like, "Tell me a little bit about my life." And I was like, "There's no way she would know that. I'd never gone to a psychic before this." And she's telling me these things, and I'm like, no one would know that. Oh my God. And she's like, yeah, you're going to be doing this work. And I remember laughing. I'm like, no, I'm not. I have a science degree. Like, there's no way. And she's like, no, you're going to do this work. And I was like, okay, cool. After that phone call, I don't know if that was like what I call the permission slip or the validation I needed or whatever, but my entire life changed. I felt so called into this. I remember going to a spiritual shop and getting my own pack of tarot cards, and I was literally shaking because I was like, is this a sin? Like, oh my God.
Wow.
And I took a lot, like, I just had so much fear, and it took a lot of courage to go there. And I say that I was in a spiritual closet because no one knew. Like when I say it was such a secret, it was such a secret. And I told my friend at the time, who is now my best friend, we've been best friends for like 9 years
Mhm.
now, but she allowed me to start doing readings for her. And she's like, Pat, this is amazing. Like these are things that are coming true. Like, how do you know this? And little by little, it started with little readings, and then it would trickle into more and more. And then I was like, wait, oh my gosh, I don't want a 9 to 5. Like this is fulfilling work. And then I started my little Etsy, and then Etsy went to my, it grew into my own website, and here I am. But that's a synopsis, like a
Yeah,
very,
yeah. I love it. Okay, so let me ask you this.
yeah,
Isn't it interesting, and do you see this in the people that you do readings for and in your own life, how sometimes our deepest desires, like the thing that you're here to do, is met with the biggest amount of fear? So for you, it was this religion, like you had to hide it. It's just being honest about who you are, but then like, what are people going to think?
yes,
And it's so like, I think that sometimes we just choose these paths that are safe instead of what our deepest heart's desires are, because the deepest heart's desires means you have to overcome the biggest fear. Do you see that a
absolutely.
lot in life?
Absolutely, yes. And I will say too, I've noticed that people's biggest traumas or wounds is like where their mission lies. Like the
Mhm.
hardest day of your life becomes the best day of your life if you're able to alchemize and heal and like transform that. But yes, I see that all the time. And I had so many clients where they first start with one thing like, "Oh, what am I meant to do?" I get that question all the time. Like, "What's my life purpose?" And I'm like, yeah, I can't answer that for you, but I can say go back to your childhood. What were you absolutely inspired by? What's your worst thing that you've been through in your life? Because there's wisdom there. If you're able to
Mm.
see it, there's wisdom there. But yeah, to your point, it takes so much courage. And I think that's part of our soul blueprint, or like our what we agree to overcome.
That makes perfect sense, for sure. Because I look at what I'm doing now in this space of psychedelics and running retreats, and the retreats
Yeah.
aren't the hard part, but there's no way the Eva of 5 years ago, heck, 3 years ago, right? But much less like 10 years ago. That version
Yeah.
of me was so far away from who I am today. And not that that version of me wasn't amazing and great and did wonderful things too, but it's just interesting how sometimes the thing that we're the most resistant of is the thing that we need to lean the most into. And I've just seen that in
Yes.
my own life. And now you're another example of that, because you've leaned into this and wow, like how this has grown.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, there was so much fear there. I was like, and there was a point too where I felt so lonely and misunderstood. And I look back now and I laugh 'cause I'm like, ew, what story was I living in? Like that's gross. What version
Yeah.
of that is just trash? But I look back now and I'm like, wow, that was pivotal for me. I needed the isolation. I needed the loneliness. And that was my dark night of the soul, or that catalyst that helped me grow. And I was like, wow, okay, God, if you're gonna use me, I'm here, but like, what the heck? Like this is hard. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, that was the best decision of my life. And I
Mm.
would I would do this work for free if, didn't have bills to pay and things like that. But yeah,
Yeah, that's how I feel too. I think that's how you know you're on the right path. when the work you're doing you would do for free if it meant that you could just live
Live.
like basic, right? Like I don't
Yes.
even need a lot. I just like just basic. Like basic needs are met and I will do this. I don't need a whole bunch of stuff. I think that's when you really know like cuz you wake up
You're
every day
in.
excited, right?
Yes. Yes.
Mm,
That's like you're in alignment, you're in your passion, you're living your path. And I tell people too, like it's okay if those things shift. Like we're talking about, like how do you want to be introduced? And it's like psychic medium, yes, psychic development coach, but those are just labels. Like, and if something else comes along my path and I'm directed there, then so be it.
yes, that's exactly and to me that's living in flow, right? You're not saying I am this, I
Hmm.
am this belief, this label, this identity, blah blah blah. Let me put myself in a box as much of with so many like locks that I
Yes.
can't get out of, right? It's like just hold on to that thing, but then you can also just like put it down. Like, nope, I don't believe that anymore. I don't want that anymore. Or actually, yeah, I want this thing now. Let me try this and see how it feels for a minute.
Yeah.
So was that hard for you when you started shifting into that? How did your personal life, how was that impacted?
That's a really good
Like
question.
starting to own it, right? Because there's we all get in that phase where when you start to really step into your own flow, and I mean we can get into like psychic development stuff, but this is just for anyone, right? Yours happens to be psychic coaching and
Yeah.
have these
Just
gifts, but
psychic
for all of
work
us, we
and
have a
yeah.
thing. So what do you think about that?
I think my personal life shifted in a way where I was met with a lot of resistance. Like my own family even like, wait, what are you doing? You have a college degree and you're doing what now? Like I got that. I got people like, wait, you think you can like tell the future and stuff? Like, how are you gonna make a business out of that? Or, oh, you think you're special? You know what I mean? Like, you get all these
Mm,
things, and to me, I was like, oh no, are they right? And I had to work through that. I had to work through my own wounds, my own like how I saw myself as well. And then I realized stepping into this, I lost people in my life, and then I started making space to gain people in my life. So it's like the
mm.
people that no longer resonated with me, it was like boom, out. And I was like, oh my gosh, and mourning those relationships and mourning like what I thought they meant to me and all these things.
Yep.
And now I look back and I'm like, no, they had to go. Like, of course it makes sense now because I'm able to connect with people that resonate on my frequency and the clients that come to me that actually get value from what I do and see the gift and honor it. And the people that can't see that, that's okay. But it took me years to understand that. Like, those people can flow out of your life. And guess what? Some of them have circled back. And I'm like, that is such a gift to be able to allow them to depart and then come back. And it's like
Mhm.
you're meeting a different version of each other. And it's quite beautiful. But yeah, my
I think
personal
that
life
is really
completely
beautiful.
shifted.
What about your parents? How are they
My
now?
parents were, it's interesting because I have adoptive parents and biological parents. So it gets all kind
Okay,
of
so you
mixed
know
up
both.
there.
You know everyone.
Yes,
Okay.
but my adoptive parents, unfortunately, I don't have like a close relationship with, so it wasn't something where it's like, oh my gosh, what do you think of this? My biological parents, it was more of them just wanting me to be happy, but
Mm,
I don't think it was a, hey, mom and dad, this is what I'm doing now. You know what I mean? But
mhm,
what I've understood too is with this gift, it's so interesting. I've never said this out loud, like publicly before, but with this gift, I've got information about my biological family that I never knew about
mm.
until my gifts were activated. And I'm like, this spirit came to me in my dream last night. Who is this? Finding out that my mom had another kid. And I'm like, I have a sister? Wait, what? Or, you know what I mean? It's like mind boggling. And if it wasn't for those interactions with my family, I would never know. I would feel insane. Like, hey, this
Yeah.
little girl said hi to me in my dream. Who is this? Oh, mom had a miscarriage, unfortunately, and that's your sister. What? You know what I mean? Just insane. But my
Wow.
family, I will say, they are so supportive in the best way that they can be. Are all of them lining up like, oh my gosh, let's get readings? No. No, I'm gonna be real. They're not. They're just like, okay, Pat does that thing.
Yeah.
But I have had siblings that have sent people to me. They're like, maybe I don't want a reading myself, but I believe in what you do and you clearly help a lot of people. So here's someone that lost. a loved one, and I really feel like it's beneficial to talk to you. And so it's interesting how the people closest to you can sometimes feel like your enemy, but also so loving and supportive. And I think it just shows you the duality of us as humans. And I
Yeah.
think to the basis of their being, they love me so deeply. They want me to be successful
Yeah.
and
And
happy.
ultimately, it's okay that people don't agree with
Yes.
everything that we are or stand for or believe or whatever. Like, we're all on our own journey
Yes.
trying to figure this out. And as long as you can hold space for where they're at and they can hold space for where you're at, then that at least gives you enough room to not be worried about that while you're trying to also cultivate your own gifts and
Yes.
step into this life, whatever it might be, for whoever's out there, right? Like there's going to be the naysayers, but deep down, there's something calling you. And when you just start to say yes, right? So you started giving readings to your friend. Let's like show people how this plays out. You start with your friend.
Yes.
Then you say you do a few of those, and then you're like, okay, maybe Etsy. No one really has to know me. It's a little
Yeah.
shop. We'll just kind of see. I'll make it like
Stop.
$10, right? Like I don't really want to be seen.
No.
I know the path
I'll
through.
make it $3,
Okay,
$5. I was like looking back at how I started that. I was like, what was I doing? $3 and $5 is not paying the bills, mama.
right. But then also, like, you're totally giving your stuff away because
Yes.
you are, as someone who's bought many Etsy things, right? Like, I'm like, if someone's selling their thing for $3, they must not be that good. Like, they
Yes.
don't trust themselves. They don't really know what
Yes.
they're doing, right? And then the ones that were like 100, I don't know if they were that great or not, because honestly, like, you're the best one I've ever had. And they were
Thank you.
110, 150, whatever they
Yes.
were. And I'm thinking like, okay, maybe we'll wait and see,
No.
or
Oh my
sort of
God.
resonates. And it just didn't matter, right? But for some reason, as the consumer, I went like, "Oh, well, if they have a higher price point, they must know more." So for you to devalue yourself like that just because you're afraid to put
Yes.
yourself out there, but it didn't stop you. That's
No.
the positive, right? Like it was enough to keep you going. It's that cycle of success.
Yes.
You get someone says, "Oh my gosh, that was amazing." And you're like, "It was? Okay, let me keep going." And is that
I
what
will
happened? You just
say,
kept going more?
seriously, yes. I'm like, are you psychic? Because
No, I know the journey. I like whether it's with this or anything else, it's like this is the process for all of us as
Yes.
we discover our own blueprint and start to live it in the world. But
Yes.
I get it. I just know your path as an entrepreneur also. Like I'm there with you. And so I know that really well.
I'm like, okay, no, but legitimately, that is exactly what it was. I remember being terrified because I'm like trying to figure out Etsy, okay, and I'm like, is this a space for psychics? Like, and I'm trying to do my market analysis research on what other people are doing, how they do their listings, what works, what doesn't work. I was also terrified of the reviews part. Like, people are leaving reviews and they're saying if this is accurate or not. And I was so scared. Like, what if I'm wrong? Oh my God. And
Mhm.
the whole thing about the pricing, I struggled so deeply with. I had this gift. Am I even supposed to charge? Is that right? Is that ethical? Is that moral? If I have this gift and I know I'm meant to
Mm,
serve, should I put a price tag on that? And I'm sitting here like struggling, like, oh my gosh, the readings I did with my friends, I wasn't charging them. Are you kidding me? Like, I
right,
was like,
right.
thank you for even letting me like shuffle some cards and tune in and do my thing. But now that it's, the World Wide Web, I'm like, how do I do this? And so I think with my Etsy, it was the perfect platform to start.
Yeah.
And I'm not kidding. I had like $1 reading, $3 reading, $5 reading. And I thought the $5 readings were like, oh my God, someone just got a $5 reading. And it was so funny because I was typing out messages as well. So I would tune in and then go on my phone and type, or like type it on the computer and like send. So I had like paragraphs of information. And it was like, wow. And I met this amazing woman. Her name is Tasha, and she was like, I think it's time you up your price. And I was like, no, are you kidding me? Like, what do you mean? Why are you saying that to me? And she was just like, because your value is like through the roof, dude. Like, what are you doing? And she's like, trust me, like I've started businesses, you need to up your price. And she told me exactly what you're saying. Like, if you're too low, no one takes you seriously, or they think you're a scammer. And if you're
Hmm.
too high, it's like people are like, wait, what's going on? And you may not get that many people. So she was someone that came into my life. I genuinely feel was guided to help mentor me in that, like,
Mm.
business and finding your gift and like combining the two and
Yeah.
what your value is and that kind of thing. And I've scaled since. And I remember when I had my first $30 reading, $45 reading, and my most expensive now is 222 for mediumship. And that, even to me, I'm like, okay, okay, I'm here. I don't want to go much more than that because, again, I want this to be something that people can actually connect with and it's affordable. And
Yeah.
if I'm able to share my gifts, so be it. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's so funny you mentioned that with the pricing and all of that, because that's exactly what I lived, like, to the
Well, you're
T.
not the only one. I think many, if anyone's watching this and they're an entrepreneur, they're going to resonate with this. It's like just
Yeah.
figuring it out. And so good for you that you've been able to figure it out and then you've been able to scale and trust. And as you stepped into your gift and then you get positive feedback, that loop, it just kept you going. It was enough to keep you going to where you are
Yes.
today. Okay. So let's talk about a little bit about that. The work that you do today. I don't know where you want to go. I would love to talk to you about psychic development, right? Like
Okay.
how do we develop our own intuition, that own knowingness within ourselves? I think that is something that's really interesting. And then also, I'm curious on how you prepare for your reading. So, and maybe that kind of goes hand in hand with the other thing, but like, here's someone, and I don't care if they paid you $20 or if they paid you $200, like there's a human who has a deep
Yes.
question and they're saying, can you help me here?
Yes.
And you can't just be like, okay, sure. um okay, so what I'm feeling is blah 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 blah. Like, I know you must do something, like, to go like, okay, who is this person? What am I,
Yes.
right? Like, there's got to be some
Yes.
practice. So I want to kind of go to both those areas because I think whatever your practices are could also help us individually be better humans and tap into our own gifts and
Yeah.
trust ourselves more. So wherever you want to go with whatever's coming up
Absolutely.
for you.
Okay. I will say they're definitely like so connected. Because even in the psychic development course I created,
Mm.
I teach my own practices. I'm like, this is what I've used for my own life. Here's the, how do you say it, like the quick way there, so that you
Yeah.
don't have to take as much time as I did to get there. But for, I will answer like connecting with clients because I think that's interesting, and then kind of going into
Okay.
what people can do to develop their own
Yeah.
intuition and psychic gifts. So for clients, I've noticed that when I first started, it was like maybe doing two readings here and there. It wasn't like crazy. And then as my business grew and there was a lot more orders coming in, it was a lot. I recognized that I had to fix what I describe as my own spiritual hygiene. As a psychic and as a human, like, you go through life. Like, there have been good moments in my life and things that I'm like, oh, I have to heal this. Oh my God. And I have to like stay in a channeled alignment to answer people's questions. And so there's a whole balance there, right? But through that own journey of my life, I recognize I have to have a daily spiritual practice. I have to have something that I do every single day that either helps me align, helps me ground, clears my energy, because doing this work, I recognize I'm just the channel. And a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, you're so gifted, this, that, and the other. But it's like, it's not me. It's the ability just to tune into consciousness or the truth or God or whatever you want to call it. And so I recognize I had to step out of the way. So I do things to get out of the way as much as possible and to tune into people's energy. And it's so interesting because opening yourself up more publicly, you don't know who and what you're connecting to it all the time, or people's background, or things that they've gone through in their own life. So when you're tuning into someone's energy field, you can start picking up all kinds of stuff, like not only answering their questions, but stuff they don't want anyone to know, like their secrets, but it lies in their auric field. And so things that I do, and I've done this like for a few years now, is not only meditation but breath work to release, to really ground myself. I love sitting on the floor, which I'm doing now, but it
Mhm.
helps me feel so grounded and connected. I also will do meditations. when I first started meditating, I would fall asleep. It was like I was zooted into a different reality. I don't know what exactly happened to me there, but I would come back and be like, whoa, how long was I out? Like, that was crazy. And now I'm able to channel a little bit more. So it's like my body can relax, but my mind is still here. What else do I do?
Wait, can
Water
I
is
ask you
very,
about your
very important.
meditation practice really quick and
Yeah.
your breath work? So can I get a little
Yes.
specific with you?
Yeah.
So when you meditate, what I know, like when you do your readings, you have music playing in the background. So I'm
Don't tell
curious,
them. I'm kidding.
how, how do you meditate? Because I have to, if I just am sitting in silence, I am not a good meditator. I don't know. I just, like you said, fall asleep, go somewhere else. But if I can have music on, it kind
Yeah.
of grounds me into my feelings and thoughts. I'll put headphones on
Yes.
and listen, and just like music you'd like nothing with words even, just
Yes.
like
I know what you mean.
just background music, but like
Yeah.
something. So how do you meditate? I'm curious what that looks like for you. Sitting on the ground, but is it quiet? Do you light a candle? Or what are you thinking? Like, do you set an intention before you go in? Do you do
Yes.
some breathing first? Okay, so
Yes.
yes.
Okay. So with background music, I will make a note so I don't forget. The background music that I use for all of my channelings, most people listening to it would be like, "Oh, it's pretty, it's birds, it's chimes, whatever." It's all specific frequencies. So it's like I will literally put on YouTube 532 hertz,
Mhm.
1111 hertz, and it's very specific and very intentional. It's just not pretty music in the background because it also helps me elevate my energy to be able to hold that vibration to channel. So just saying that before I forget.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, with meditation, I definitely do like candles. I'm not gonna say like, oh my gosh, I have candles everywhere. No. And I bought the like 100 pack from Walmart, like tea light candles. I ran through those. I was just like, okay, I can't keep up with that all the time when I'm going to meditate.
Mhm.
Um, but I will do breath work. So just the basic box breathing, inhale 4, hold 4, release 4, hold 4. So I will
Mhm.
do that just to get into what I call like flow. And
Yep.
then for my meditations, I've done guided meditations. That's really where I started because sitting in silence was not it for me at all either. And my
Mhm.
mind was racing. This is a practice. Meditation is a practice. And I think a lot of people think meditation is trying to quiet the mind. It's not. It's becoming the conscious observer of your being, of your energy, of the thoughts that come in. And so with my own meditative practices, it started with guided meditations on YouTube. You can literally look this up, it's free. And then it moved into, okay, can I sit in the beingness? Can I sit in the silence? And for me, I recognized it was allowing thoughts to come in, not entertaining them. So in the past, a thought would come in and I'm like almost creating a little story or a scenario, my head around it,
Mm.
all of the shenanigans, right? And I was like, wait, this doesn't matter. This can also go. And so I allow it to whoop, go away. But now I can say it's been a practice for a few years where I legitimately like the silence. It is so peaceful. It makes me feel. I listen to remote viewing frequencies, which I can share the link for you to share with other people as well. But it is literally like binaural beats almost in your headphones, and your
Mhm.
brain syncs to it. And to me, I can sit in that and just breathe, and it feels like transcendence. Like there's no human word to describe the peace and clarity that you
Mm.
feel when you're able to hit that place. But again, it didn't start there. So I'm not going to pretend I'm some monk or guru, okay? Like this took practice. But before I connect with clients' energy, that's what I have to do for myself. And if I'm going through something on the human experience, I
Yeah.
even will tell clients I need some time because it's important for me to show up as the best version of myself or in the best alignment that I can. And for example, when I was going through grief of losing a loved one or ending a really important relationship in my life, it's like everything would trigger me. Like people ask me about love, and I'm like, love? I just got broken up with. Like, well, who cares?
Mm.
So it's like having that meditative practice, it's like the path that I know disappears and source, God, the universe, like steps in and allows me to channel. So that's what I would say about meditation. It's so important.
Mm, I think that's really fascinating. I have a question. So
Yeah.
I have many, but I have a question. As you were saying that, so my person, Julian, he got me this headband that I can like lay down with, and there's like just a
Ooh,
little I'll send you a link. But it's really nice because sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I can't fall back to sleep. And so then I would just like put something on and I would just be I wouldn't want to wake him up. So I would just put like
yeah.
one earbud in and just try to fall asleep like listening to something, and then eventually I would just take it out because I could be so tired and then I could go back to sleep. So the thought came to me the other day, instead of just listening to like whatever YouTube show, podcast that I would like want to put on, what if I put on binaural beats? What if I put on one of these songs that I send people to on a journey? So I'm listening to a frequency, I'm listening to something that then when I go back, and especially like that 3 to 6 in the morning phase,
Yes.
I feel like there's a lot
Yes.
of stuff, at least for me, when I lucid dream, it's during that time. It's not when I first fall asleep. It's when I wake up at 3 in the morning and then go, oh, it's only 3 in the morning. Oh, I can go back to sleep. And then all of a sudden, all the stuff comes in. So I'm curious your thoughts around listening to something at night. Is that helpful? Do you think it's not helpful for people? What are your
Yes,
thoughts around
yes,
that?
absolutely helpful. The 3 to 5 a.m., I will say my own personal experience is what I describe as like the veil being the thinnest between our 3D reality and the supernatural or spiritual world. So things happening between then, especially if you're going through a spiritual awakening or you're a very conscious being, you are going to be awoken during those times. It's super normal and it can be very frustrating. So listening to something I would say is so important. It is one of the secrets and tips I have in my psychic development course because a lot of people will fall asleep to the TV or you know what I mean? And it's just
Yeah.
like they don't intentionally do it, but it's like you don't even know what the TV is playing and what that's feeding your subconscious mind.
Yes.
Because when you're
Yes.
asleep, your subconscious is like permeable. So, what I've noticed in my psychic work, what really helped amplify my gifts was listening to frequency at night. And to the point where the relationship I was in about a year ago, um, that guy would be like, "Can we put the music on?" And I'm like, "Wait, you're asking for this? Okay, cool." Because
Mm.
it made such a difference in his life as well. But the frequency that I would highly recommend is not just the binaural beats, but specific frequencies that help you get into those brain wavelength patterns. A lot of people will also say, "Oh my gosh, what's the word on that?" It's like, what do you call that? Where it's like it's the binaural beats, but under it they put affirmations or
Yeah, like subconscious programming, like,
yes, yes,
"You are
those
beautiful. You are
yes,
strong." Like,
those sound
"You
so
can do
silly,
anything."
so silly. But if you can allow yourself to train your mind, I'm telling you, you will wake
Mm.
up and be like, wait, I am beautiful. I do value myself and all those things. So yes, highly
I heard
recommend.
someone say if you could record yourself saying your own affirmations, and I mean, even if you have to pay someone on Fiverr or whatever to do it for you, like take the binaural beats, put your voice on under
Yes.
it and drop it down so it's subconscious like create your own subconscious programming. But
Yes.
they said when you hear your own voice telling yourself these things, it's not, Joe out there who made a podcast or whatever, but it's your own voice saying it that you believe it more and that it lands a little bit more. So I don't know what it would take for people to really do that. Maybe someone wants to start a business out there. Here you go, free idea. I'll buy it. But yeah, I
Seriously,
think that's
but
really
yeah.
interesting. Okay, give me another tip. What is something else
Okay.
that people can
Um,
do to tap into their own gifts?
so I will say tuning into okay. I personally believe everyone is psychic. This is not like a, oh my God, you're gifted and I'm not. No. This is part of the our human experience, right? Things like telepathy happen all the time. But we have to slow down. We have to slow down in this world because we are constantly bombarded with opinions, ideas, noise, fear, all of this stuff. So, the biggest thing I will say in developing your own psychic and intuitive abilities is slowing down. And we already talked about meditation, we talked about like listening to frequency, those are so important. But also knowing what your own inner voice sounds like. What does your intuition sound like? What does it feel like when you are actually connecting with yourself? That still soft inner voice. And that is such a big thing that people are like, well, I just want my abilities to like tell me what to do, or like help me win the lottery or make some money. And it's like that's all great, but can you tune into your own inner voice, your own intuitive guidance system, or compass is what I call it sometimes too. So that in and of itself is a huge thing that is so simple, but it's so simple that most people won't do it, you know?
So how do we nurture that? What are ways that we can nurture that intuition? So when we hear that voice and it says, start that Etsy site, and you're like, no, who would ever want, fine, maybe 50 cents. Let's see if anyone buys it. Right. Like, but how do you know
Stop
when
it.
it's your own voice, like versus just the ruminating
Yeah.
voice that we have, it's like the good angel, the bad angel, not good or bad, but how do you
Yes.
know? How do you know, like, yes, this is the one?
Yeah, great question. A really important teacher and mentor in my own life, her name is Patricia Mona. She's a phenomenal remote viewer, psychic medium herself. And she says this quote that I live by now. And it's like the truth hits differently. It hits in your body in a different way. And it's important for us to know the difference between our fears and anxieties and what the truth is. And I think you've told me this before too, is like your intuition requires you sometimes to do things out of courage, where it's like you hear it and it's like, I don't know about that. But then it's like, wait, when I actually take action on this, everything changes. And I call those like pivotal moments. So
Mhm.
slowing down is the biggest thing so that you can actually hear that inner guidance system. But once that inner guidance system comes through, it's about building that relationship with yourself and allowing that to amplify, because that's
Mhm.
exactly what happened in my life. I see it happening for clients all the time. Like, oh my gosh, I had that little nudge, and instead of ignoring it, I like went with it. And then it led to this, and then this happened. And it's so funny how it's like this domino effect that can happen. But a lot of times we brush it away. Like, for example, when I was in college one day, I remember hearing that voice, like, bring your umbrella. And I was like, it's sunshine and rainbows outside. Nothing's going to happen. I brought up the weather app. Nothing. Clear skies. After my first class, you hear the rumble. And I was like, is it raining? Are you serious? And I thought to myself, wow, this was preventable. I told myself
Mhm.
earlier to bring my umbrella, and I thought I was crazy. And I was like, oh, there's no reason to even listen to that. And now I have to run through the rain. So your intuition can save you so many times over, but it's about developing that inner voice where you're starting to trust yourself at a level that even now I will say, you don't have to believe me. I'm open to being wrong, but this is what I know. And it's so funny how that will come true or happen in some way or unfold. And I'm like, whoa, okay, yeah, because I trusted myself. But it wasn't always like
Mhm.
that.
It's so true. And what I found in my own life, and I'm curious if you've had this with clients or in your own life as well. Like going along in life, things are, you think fine, and then you have something happen, like you're some dark night of the soul thing, and then learning to trust yourself again. Like, oh my gosh, how do I trust that voice when I picked a partner who blah blah blah?
Yes.
How do I trust myself when I started this thing and then it didn't work out and I thought I meant to do that? And so sometimes when we trust ourselves, then bad things happen, right? It doesn't work out the way that we want, or it doesn't come to fruition. So how do you deal with that? Or what do you say to people around that, like even coming back home to trusting yourself again?
Yes. I would say that happened in my own life, like this
Mhm.
big breakup that I had. Um, it was like a lot of trust was broken. And I was like, oh my God, do I even know what I'm talking about? Like, what is going on?
Mm.
And it took me to be able to go within and understand the wisdom of that. And it was it because, oh, I trusted myself, I chose this partner, this, that, and the other happened and unfolded. And was that necessarily bad? Or did it just go beyond what I was expecting to happen? My own ego of what this is going to be and what the meaning behind it is. So I
Mm.
will say a lot of the times it's not that our intuition is wrong, because I feel like what is meant for you will be part of your path or part of your life experience. But it's about being able to go through those moments where we felt the disconnect, the distrust, the whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
sit with what the wisdom is. Because 9 times out of 10, it's not because we didn't trust ourselves or it wasn't what was meant for us, but we had a different expectation or meaning on what that was going to be.
Yeah. Dang. Isn't that true? And
All
that's the
that I
thing.
know.
There is wisdom in everything, right? Like
Yeah.
everything that's happened to us, we can look at it as victim, like, why'd this happen to me? Why were you put up for adoption? And then you got this family that didn't support your gifts and blah, blah, blah. And it could be this whole
Yeah.
story, or it could be like, that was the exact path that I needed to go down because look at everything else that transpired because of it. So you can look at it from both things are true, I guess, right? That's what I
Yes.
say sometimes. I'm like, you can walk into my house and be like, wow, that's a hot mess in there. Yeah, I got 6 kids. Well, now 5 at home. So it's messy, but I also have 5 kids and I have a house and I've
And
got
it's full of life.
and it's
Yes.
beautiful, like, right? So it's both things. It's chaos and beauty. And I think
Yes.
that's true for all of us in our lives. So where do you lean? Do you lean and put your awareness on the chaos and the not trusting, or do you lean into your own intuition and serving? And I love how you said that, like with your mentor, just like it leans into love, really, ultimately. Is it fear? Is it coming from a place of fear? Is it coming from a place of
Yeah.
love? And when I tell my kids sometimes, if you're thinking of a compliment for someone, you better say it, because it's not meant for you. Like, it's not meant for you to like keep it in there, like if you're looking at someone and you're like, gosh, she's really pretty, or she has really nice eyes, or that thing she said really touched me. How about let them know? I mean, I think in simple ways, that's even trusting your intuition, just giving out that
Yes.
compliment when it comes in, or picking up the phone and calling that person when you think of them, pausing your project that you're working on because you have this deep desire to go take a walk outside. I don't know. Just go do
Yes.
it. See what happens.
Seriously. Seriously. I totally agree. It's like life happens in those little moments that you don't think are little or you don't think matter. And it's like, oh,
Mhm.
that's not a big deal. Like she probably hears that all the time or whatever. And it's like, no, those are moments that are so pivotal for people and speak to their soul and they need that.
Mhm. Do you find that people who haven't worked through a lot of their trauma, that it's harder to connect to your intuition? Or can you, humans, hold a lot of trauma and still connect with that intuition?
I think all possibilities exist. Not to sound like a guru, but I really think
Okay,
all
fair.
of it, yes. I will say the strongest people that I've met have looked at those wounds and those traumas and healed them and literally have flourished and blossomed and have so much light that they hold within their being. The people that have trauma that refuse to look at it or, they're in their own state of consciousness and they're not even awakened, as we would say, it's
Mhm,
like they do have gifts to share to the world and the intuition that they're getting is almost suppressed in a way. So it's like they could be so gifted because it's part of their natural essence.
mhm,
But if they took the time to really dive deep into those things, it would almost skyrocket. And I've noticed that in my own life. I'm speaking from my own experience. I had so much to work through with things that I've been through in life. And as I've done those, and even what I was mentioning before, breaking up with this guy a year ago, after I ended that relationship, I stepped fully into mediumship. And I realized like, oh my gosh, my gifts, my abilities to really become so much more accurate blossomed. And I told my best friend, I was like, what is that? Like, what was that? Was it getting rid of this relationship? Like, what is that? And I sat with it and I understood from my perspective that that person I was with wasn't able to hold space for me to really tune into
yeah,
mediumship, to tune into my abilities. So going back to your question, I would say all of it is possible, but I've noticed that the people that heal their junk, it's like they vibrate at such a bold
mhm,
energy and their gifts just like streamline and it's like and the things that they do ripple out into the world and affect people at such a huge level versus the people that are stuck in their own junk, and it's like they're solidified in their stories that don't serve them.
Yep. Totally get that. I'm should I say glad? I don't know. I guess glad that you say that, 'cause
Yeah.
that's what I've been thinking. I'm like, we
Yeah.
have to heal first. And there's, I guess, being a human, there's always this healing. This It's
Yes.
perpetual healing, right? Because stuff keeps coming our way. So we have to keep healing from the stuff that's coming our way. So it's like if you haven't healed from the past stuff, it's just really building. It's like big, big walls. So it's like if you
Yeah.
can work on the past stuff, and then as the new stuff comes in, you're sort of dealing with it as it's coming in. It's like not letting junk in your house just pile up, right? It's like you get the mail and you deal with it right then. You throw away the
Yes.
junk, you put the things where they need to go one time. You don't put it somewhere and then move it again and move it again and just keep moving it around, not opening it. Like, right? We got to look at it to
Yeah.
be able to like
Ooh.
fully expand. Okay. I love that. So now I'm curious. So I had this experience the other day. Um, One of the gals who came to one of the retreats that I run, she was taking this consciousness class, and she says, I don't think I ever told you, before I ever met you, in this consciousness class they gave us an exercise. And so my question to you, I'll tell you what the exercise they had, but while I'm telling you this, I'm curious if you have any outside of what you've already shared that can help people really tap into these abilities. So this exercise that they gave to this woman and to the class was that you took a mirror and you literally stared at yourself at your third eye in the mirror for 10 minutes. I don't know, some amount of time. And she said the first few, they would do this like maybe before they started their class or something like that. You just kind of stare into it and just sort of, I don't know, wait for something to happen. So she said the first few times nothing happened. And then she said, then like the third time she did it, she totally saw this woman. This woman came through and she didn't know if it was her past life, what it was, but she came back into the room with this class and said, "Oh my gosh, I saw this woman and she was beautiful. I don't know if it was me in this past life or what it was, but I saw something." She was just so excited that she saw something, right? So then we had our first group Zoom call for this retreat that I was holding in December. She said when she got on that call and saw my face, she went white because what she saw in that mirror was me. And she said she
Woo.
didn't know who I was, right? She was like trying to make up a
Yes.
story like who this person was. But isn't that interesting? Like at a very pivotal time in her life. And what I didn't know, which was so interesting, and I didn't tell her this, when she walked into the house and I was outside of just Zoom meeting them, when everyone walks in, I look at them. Like I look into their eyes. I want to see them. I want them to see me. And I just have this moment of like, we are not going to break eye contact for a second. I just want to look into your soul and see you. And
Yeah.
when we made that connection, we both started crying. Like she started to well up and I started to cry. And I'm like, she goes, I don't know where this is coming from. And I said, I don't know either, but welcome to the retreat, and we gave
Yeah.
each other a hug. But I'm thinking for her, here she had this vision of this person in a pivotal time in her life when she was going to have this retreat experience where she was going to do this super deep dive into her subconscious, and it was almost like that mirror. I don't know what it is about that or why that works, but I'm curious if you have any thoughts around that particular exercise or that experience, and or any other little things that we can do like that might be able to help us sort of tap into these other dimensions or spaces of knowingness.
Yeah. Okay, first of all, that story is insane. I truly believe that mirrors are portals, and I don't mean that in a scary way, but like it's very similar to like looking into a crystal ball. Like it amplifies experiences. So I truly believe that she was seeing the future of what she needed to understand, and then connecting with you put it all together. Like, oh my gosh. I also feel like with that there's something about, and I've talked to you about this before, like people that are in your soul family, where it's like you connect and you're like, I know you, why do I know you? Like it's just like instant, and you don't know how it makes logical sense because it doesn't, but it does. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So there's definitely a soul family tie there. As far as things that people can do to really connect with their own consciousness and intuition, um, honestly, meditation, but there's this thing called the gateway tapes that I am doing with my really good friend, and you can find this like online as well. I can give you the link to this too. But it's basically the binaural beats, and this guy Robert Monroe, he started the Monroe Institute, and it's connecting specifically with remote viewing, which is the ability to almost with your consciousness, how do I describe this for like normal people? It's the ability to project your consciousness outside of your body. And with the gateway tapes, it's like a series of 6 videos. They're like 30 minutes long, but it takes you into what he calls focus 10. And focus 10 is the state of being where your body is asleep, but your consciousness, your waking mind is awake or alert.
Mm-hmm.
So you will literally feel like your body is like falling asleep, but you're able to do things with your mind. And so in this gateway tapes, he has you visualize things. He has you um, practice how to go from focus 10 to like mind awake, body asleep to coming back to just a normal, restful, waking state. And that's really intriguing because a lot of people don't know that they have that ability to do that with their mind and to be able to settle into a state of being that allows them to just be.
Mm-hmm.
And I also will say with that, I'm not saying everyone has to practice remote viewing, but it is something that is taught. It is not necessarily a psychic thing. It is literally a thing that you can do as a human being. So with that, you can visualize things. Like for example, if I'm like visualize a red juicy apple, you can close your eyes and really picture in front of you. And I have people almost like turn it, like spin it, whatever. But doing things like that will help amplify. And the last thing I will say is in the gateway tapes, he has this, I don't know if it's like phrase or paragraph to say, but it basically starts with this acknowledgement that I am more than my physical body. Because I think so often in our reality, we're like, this is our body, this is what I look like, this is so real.
Mm-hmm.
But in a bigger space, this is just the avatar. And we've talked about that too personally. Like, this is just the avatar, and you are the consciousness, you are the soul within this human experience. And so the gateway tapes is something that I feel like is guided enough so that anyone can
Mm-hmm.
try this, but also can take you into those elevated states of awareness pretty quickly.
I think that's so interesting. So I don't visualize very well. So
Okay.
what do you say for someone who doesn't visualize? Like I know if you say visualize a red apple, I know what a red apple looks like, but when I close my eyes, I just see black.
Yeah. I would say that it'll take practice, yes, but also besides visualization, there is the feeling. You can go back into your recesses of memory of having experience with biting into a red apple and that kind of thing. Um, I also have clients that just feel things deeply. So if I'm like, envision a red apple, you may not see it in your mind's eye,
Mm.
but you can feel a memory or an emotion behind what that connects with. And so those are just subtle things that can happen. Or some people are clairaudient, so they hear it. So I'm like, bite into the apple and you can hear like a little crunch. You know what I mean? So there's different
Mhm.
ways to amplify the other gifts. But the visualization, I find that a lot of people, it's not stunted necessarily, but it's a blocked a little bit more because we're so used to being fed visuals that in your own mind, practicing that is like, does this just not work for me? And it's like, no, it's just going to take a little bit more practice to be able to have that experience.
And that's going back to the meditation again, like what
Yes.
you said before, right? Like just sitting there, sitting like
Yeah.
letting yourself just be there. But
Everyone hates that, but I'm telling you.
yeah, I do appreciate you saying though the different ways that you can experience the apple. So even though you're saying visualize it, you might know it, you might be able to
Yes.
hear it, you might be able to taste it, you might different ways. And then I'm assuming that would correlate with sort of your abilities, like whatever they are.
Yes.
So if you're someone who just knows it or just tastes it or just hears it or whatever, right? Like that might be an easier path for you to nurture.
Yes. Yes. So for me, when I first started, I would just know things. And I think that clear cognizance is what it's called,
Mhm.
is one of the funniest gifts or abilities to have because you don't know how you know it, you just know, and there's no evidence to this.
Mhm.
But But the more that you trust yourself and connect and like lean into it, you'll be shocked of those knowings that just grow and grow and grow. So yeah,
Okay, so here's
absolutely.
here's one of my last questions for you. What if you know something bad? Like what if you know something like you're whether you're doing a reading for someone else or you just like look out into the future, you do your remote viewing and you're like, "Oh, the world's going to shit." Like what do you do? What how do you handle that? How do you what do you do with that? Cuz you don't want to
Yeah,
we don't just always see rainbows and butterflies, right?
this is true. I will say I've definitely been told many times when I'm doing readings not to share some information. And it's not because, oh my gosh, I have the secret that I know and you don't. It's not like that. But I feel like our guides or higher consciousness is like, it's not time for them to know yet.
Mhm.
Um, or this is something very difficult that they're about to step into. So with that, I will say high levels of discernment. Is it in their highest good to know this information? So for example, I've had a client where she asked me about her dad's health. I don't answer questions on health. I'm not an intuitive medium. But my guides were saying to do this reading, so I did. And long story short, by the time she ordered the reading and I tuned in, her dad had passed. And so I was like, how do I tell this beautiful angel that I'm getting this feeling that her dad is no longer on this earth plane? And I felt so overwhelmed. I literally bawled my eyes out. And I was like, why do I know this? I shouldn't know this. Like, I don't think we should know about life and death like that. And I did tell her in the most compassionate, loving way. And she was like, thank you so much. I could hear it in your voice. You're literally grieving with us as a family. And it was healing to
Mm,
have this heavy information, but also to know that it's coming from such a pure place. And so some of the negative, good and bad are relative, but some of the
yeah.
heavier information that may come through, I will say sometimes it's not always appropriate to share. And so discernment's important. But also, you'll be shocked at how people already feel it or know it. And sometimes it's a warning for prepare for this. This is something you
Mhm.
cannot avoid, but you're going to do the best that you can to show up for this challenge.
So for you personally, do you ever just look out into the future of the world, like, or the state of this country or your own family, those types of things? Like, are you able to pick things up or sort of know things like that? Or is it
I
all
would
just by
say,
chance still?
yeah, it's interesting because for my own life, like my friends are like, Pat, do you look into your own love life? And I'm like,
Mhm,
honestly, it's really difficult to like get out of your own way for your own information because it's like too close
mhm,
sometimes. But for the state of the world and family and like things close to me, it's interesting because I have understandings about stuff and it can be very terrifying because it's like this doesn't look so good, or like how are we going to clean up yet another mess, or it can be very depressing to have. I hate to like sound so sad, but like to have knowledge about things that are coming. um for example, like I told a client about COVID before I knew what COVID was. I was just like, everything's shut down. Like, you're not going to be able to do this. And it just doesn't make sense to me. And I was like, there's so much overwhelm and I don't get it. But, anyways, good luck. Like, it's so crazy. But I think as well that if you're able to connect to that information, it's, in my opinion, supposed to be used for the highest good. So if you have
mm.
information that's heavier, not let's spin this around and make it positive, but what is the wisdom here? Why is this happening? Are we learning from the past? Because I notice a lot of the future is patterns repeating.
Yep. Lot of patterns. There's a lot of people out there who talk about that, how just even human civilizations and all of it. It's just all
Yeah.
a big pattern. And aren't we
Yes.
trying to figure out our own patterns? Like
Yes.
we're all in our own little patterns of things that the holes we keep falling into that we're like, darn it, I got to break out of that. That's my
Again.
thing.
Yeah.
Like collectively
Totally.
as a whatever world and communities,
Yeah.
we're living patterns, but then just individually also trying to figure out what those are for ourselves. So fascinating. Okay,
Wow.
Pat, any final thoughts on any of this? Like anything coming through, anything that you want to share around stuff we've talked about today?
Honestly, I would say for people to trust themselves more, I say this to every client, be kind to yourself. Do seriously be kind to yourself, because I feel like we're so hard on ourselves, and even like trying to connect to our own intuition, it's like so easily that we're like, oh, I can't do this, and whatever. So be kind to yourself is the biggest thing, and trust yourself more, because even if you don't feel like you know.
And where can people get in touch with you? How can people find you? What's the easiest path? And it'll be all in the show notes, but
Yeah,
in
for
case
sure.
they're just listening.
For personal, like if they want to DM me, probably Instagram, so the Psychic Portal 4. My website, thepsychicportal.org, is where you can connect with all the readings and all of that offering, and psychic development courses coming out. And I also have a podcast, a Divinely Guided podcast on Spotify.
Yay! Oh, I love it. Well, thank you so much for trusting yourself and stepping into your gifts and for helping people when they are in need. I think when we turn to others, it's like we're looking for that validation that we can trust ourselves. And when someone else, by connecting to the ether or whatever the heck it is, can validate you, you're like, all right, yeah, there's something more out there. I don't know what
Yes.
all the answers are, but there's something more. And I think
Yeah.
that's hope that we can keep going, that we can keep trying to figure out how to human better when we know that there's something else more than just this body, this meat sack that we're just walking around in and going like, what are we doing here? What is this all
What is
about?
this?
What is this?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, sincerely, for having me. You are, and I will say this live for the whole world to know, you are such an angel, and you hold so much light, and your mission on this planet makes a freaking difference. And I just want to seriously thank you, because you don't give yourself enough credit, period. So thank you for having me, but also thank you for this platform in and of itself, and bringing messages forward for people in your own way, and the healing you do with your retreats. I'm telling you, you are changing the world. So I love
Thanks.
you.
I think if we can all step into our gifts, then we're doing our part, whatever that is, our little piece of the puzzle. And it is. And I love you too. And I really appreciate you saying all those nice things. And thank you so much
Okay.
for coming on this show and just for sharing and expanding. When you get out there and you talk about who you are and what it is that and your gifts, it's like it just makes it less scary. And I've interviewed so many people. It's like their first time ever on a podcast was on one of mine. And I'm like, and then I see them 6 months later and they've done like 50 and they're
That's
like,
amazing.
like
Yes.
off on their thing because they think, oh, this is scary. This is hard. I'm like, just come have a conversation. So it what's the word that you use? Amplifies. I like that word.
Yes.
It amplifies all of us, right? Everyone listening gain something from it. I gain something from interacting with you. You gain something from having this experience. It's just like a win for everyone. And I love that life has those opportunities for us. So thank you so much for coming on and for being a part of this. I really appreciate you. And I can't wait to see where you go. And I'm just so grateful that you're in my life.
I adore you.
All right, hang on one second. Let me say bye to everyone. Thank you, everyone, so much for being here on another episode of Ideas to Human Better. I am your host, Eva Payne, and Patricia, Pat, P, the prophet, as her friends called her in high school, an amazing human being and just such a kind heart. And I'm so grateful that she is now in your circle of awareness as well. Be kind to yourself, as she says, and have a wonderful day. Until next time.